Between 1950 and 2015, the Hindu population of the country, the share of the Hindu population of the country has declined by nearly 8%, while the share of the Muslim population has risen by as much as 43%, says a study by the government's Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister. This is a report that arrived yesterday that reveals that the share of Hindus in India's population saw a decrease from 84% in 1950 to 78% in 2015. Similarly, with the Muslim community, the population share went from 9.84% of India's population to 14.09% of the same of the population in the same period of 65 years. Now, the author of this report is Professor Shamika Ravi. The report is titled Share of Religious Minorities Across Country Analysis Between 1950 and 2015. And as you can imagine, it's already become a big media headline, a flashpoint on the political battlefield, and you're seeing it across media at this point of time. Professor Shamika Ravi is a member of the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister and the lead author of this report that has just been published. Professor Ravi, welcome. Good to see you. Thank you very much for your time here on India Today to discuss some aspects of this report. Of course, there are many findings, there are many figures, many statistics in this report, but obviously the one that's caught everybody's attention are the figures that I just read out. The share of the majority Hindu population that has declined by about 7.82% over 65 years since 1950, and the share of the Muslim population increasing by about 43.15%. Taking just those two figures, Professor Ravi, what are the implications of that?
Well, Shiv, before we get into the implications, clearly the demographic changes are happening on the ground. The idea of this paper was to look at what is happening, what is the status of minorities across countries of the world. This is therefore a cross-country study over 65 years for over 167 countries across all continents. Now, the main finding, what you notice here, are twofold. One is that the changes that are happening in India, which is the share of minority, has grown significantly. And this is minority as a collective and for individual groups, of course. That is the question you asked. Yes. But I want to highlight that this study is to find out what is happening to overall share of minority across countries. And we find that, India, the changes that are happening in this country are similar to what is happening in liberal democracies of the world, which are open and therefore quite fostering. They are nurturing towards minorities. Quite contrary to, of course, our own neighborhood, if you consider that almost all our neighbors, if you consider not just Bangladesh, Pakistan, Afghanistan, but also Sri Lanka and Bhutan, yes, where the share of minorities have actually fallen alarmingly. So I think, these are the highlights in terms of the interest that I see in the Indian media. But of course, there are very fascinating findings from Africa, for instance, that there were 24 countries that had animism as the most predominant religion, and today none of those countries have animism as a majority. So I think the global demography in terms of religion is in a deep flux, and it's important to study these.
Yeah, you're right, Professor Ravi. The report, I have to say, because I did happen to read a large part of it, it does have a lot of information about different parts of the world, including India's neighborhood. Very eye-opening data about the neighborhood, in that comparison that you just mentioned as well. But the attention being paid to the figures that I just put out are obvious because we're in the middle of an election. There's an atmosphere of polarization. I'll get to that part in just a little bit. But taking off on something you just mentioned about a comparison between the figures here in India as far as the minority population are concerned compared, with how it is in countries like Bangladesh, Pakistan, etc. Do these figures in that case sort of blunt the narrative, ma'am, that minority populations or the Muslim population in India is under siege or under threat, or that India is anti-minority in some way? Does this blunt that narrative?
Oh, 100%. And let me be very upfront here, Shiv, that to the researchers in the room, everyone who's listening who might have seen this research, there is nothing new here, other than, of course, the larger global trends. But what has happened in India over the last 65 years is not news. Maybe the magnitude of the relative differences might be, which is why to us who follow numbers, it is always a bit surprising when we find India repeatedly under a global sort of a Western attack, that minorities in this country are under threat, because they are clearly not. And now there are many things that lead to relative shares growing over time, right? We in this paper do not get into specific aspects of it. Now, it could be fertility differences, but we know that is narrowing now. We know it could be migration, legal, illegal. It could be conversions, and we haven't had any serious conversations on any of this at a disaggregated level or even a regional sort of a level. So this study is therefore like a first step. It's a first step to recognizing the trends objectively. We are putting the facts on the table. So what you are asking in terms of implications will then flow from here, because now we have to see what is driving these kind of changes, but clearly it has policy implications for the future.
Professor, as far as the media is concerned, the elephant in the room is going to be the timing. This report drops after 3 phases of elections. There are 4 phases to go. Some would argue that the whole Hindu, I hate to simplify things, because this is, I have to say, a complex report. It has, different facets from different parts of the world. But the Hindu-Muslim part that I just quoted, becomes something of a weapon in the hands of our politicians during an election. So people will question the timing of this report coming out. How would you respond to them?
When you ask me this, the first thing that strikes me is, in the midst of the pandemic, when I used to follow the sort of the virus in terms of the spread of the infection, many people, like hundreds of thousands of people, used to follow these daily trends, but invariably, I would always get some people who would say, why are you putting out this number? Because they make people complacent. Or somebody alternately would say, why are you putting this number? This will put fear in people. Now, I am of the opinion, being an empiricist economist, that not knowing numbers or not knowing factually what is the situation on the ground cannot possibly be a better situation. So we have to know these things. Now, as far as your question on why this timing, frankly, the timing of research is really beyond us. Because people have asked us, why didn't you put it out 2 months earlier? Some people are saying, why didn't you wait another month? But, this has been a research almost 8 months in the making, because this data set is relatively novel. The religious characteristics of states. This data set is fascinating. It's fascinating, and it has taken us, unfortunately, almost 8 months to put it together. Yeah. And once it went through the review and everything, it was ready, it was uploaded.
No, because the reason I ask is pretty plain to see, Professor Ravi. You can appreciate that. You've got an election campaign where Muslim quota is a big talking point. Jitni abadi utna haq has become a rallying cry as far as population are concerned. In that context, a report of this kind goes beyond just being a piece of research that's happen to drop at this point of time. And, people who believe that the timing isn't random, it's not coincidental, that's a justifiable fear.
I'm sorry, I lost you in the middle, but are you asking me to justify the timing of the report?
No, I'm saying that critics will say at a time when, Muslim quota and things like that, Jitni abadi utna haq, which has been a rallying cry by Rahul Gandhi and others, when that kind of thing, that kind of spotlight on the Muslim community has become a big flashpoint in the political conversation on the campaign trail, a report of this kind goes beyond just being a piece of research coincidentally dropping at this time. How would you defend that, ma'am?
Oh, but Shiv, I don't feel like, as a researcher, as a scholar, I really don't feel the need to justify the timing. Because like I told you, there will always be politics. And we are a democracy. Different parties are going to look at this result from very different angles, and they are going to use it, and that's perfectly fine. The point is, if we are able to accurately and objectively measure something, that at least forms an objective and a scientific basis to even have these discussions.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it is noise, right? It's anecdotal data of one politician versus another politician. So I think, scientific evidence empirical evidence of this nature can only help sharpen and maybe improve the public conversation and the debates in this country.
You say that this report, Professor Ravi, is the first step, and there will be more. Can you explain what that means? How would such a report be used, by those that run the country? How useful is this information in terms of economic planning, etc.?
Well, this will have implications. And remember, we are a very big country, Shiv.
Yeah.
So we are saying at an all-India level, I frankly think one will have to look at these kind of demographic shifts and changes at much more localized and narrower level. Because remember, policy making is not just at the national level. So we will have to, and of course, one thing to note, which we highlight in the study, which I'm hoping the media will pick up and people will talk about, is there are very few countries in the world that even define minorities.
Yeah.
So think about, that's the reason I maintain and that India is therefore a highly progressive liberal democracy, plural democracy, and the results of this study are basically proving that point quite substantially.
Yes.
That not only do we define and we have policies, but all these cumulative policies and the environment in the community as a whole has led to an increase in the share of minorities in the country's population over time. Because this has only happened in liberal democracies. Now remember, autocracies like China do not even define minority populations. Right? And China is not is an isolated case. Many countries do not define minorities, right? And the day democracy is a number game. So obviously, collectively we vote, we make a decision and representation, political representation for what kind of policies we want.
Yeah.
So I think this, I'm hoping, will form a basis for a lot of the conversation, which have to do with religious demographics in this country. But I'm hoping to find out more. We should really have this information at more localized.
Professor Ravi, I want to come to, the Western media, the Western governments and how they've portrayed India in the recent past as my last question. But before that, also the Muslim world specifically, we've seen in the, preceding 2 or 3 years, there have been coordinated attacks on India with this narrative that India is anti-Muslim and it has oppressed its minorities. On the face of it, this report flies completely in the face of that narrative, doesn't it?
100%. And let me also, again, very clearly state, Shiv, because we looked at the literature, we looked at the publications, we have seen very few studies in the recent, let's say, last 2 decades that have actually empirically even measured these changes. Right. So while this is not a study which is India focused, it's a global study, but to most of the people in this country, anecdotally, perhaps they know these trends to be there. What we have done is objectively measured it using this RCS data. So 100%, I think it's not just the Western media, but many, even within India, many public debates around India being, not a hospitable place or not being progressive when it comes to minorities or in particular, let's say, Muslim community. That's actually not true at all. And this is just looking at the global data. Now, please remember, it's not just the Muslim groups. The Christian group has also expanded.
Yeah.
The Buddhist group has also expanded. And by expansion, I'm not saying absolute numbers. The absolute numbers is increasing for everyone. It's the relative share in the right? So it's increasing for Buddhists, it's increasing for Sikhs. And that's why I maintain that what we have fundamentally known to be true, this report is just putting some numbers to what we objectively know to be true. So I'm hoping the Western scholars or people who are interested in Indian society and religious demographics of Indian society and how truly plural India is, I think this report they should read it and use it.
Right, because religious freedom in India, not restricted to that recent US report, has become something of a kind of a sticky headline for Western media, for want of a better phrase, as far as, when it comes to writing about India, especially during these elections. So my final question then, Professor Ravi, is on that the narrative of Western governments, and it isn't just the Western media, it's also the Western governments that have been trying to push this image of India as being oppressive to its minorities. This report is empirical, it's data. Does this empower India to battle that narrative in a bigger way now?
Oh, 100%. I mean, this is We are a liberal, plural democracy. And the reason we are a shining sort of example is also the context within which we live, which is, this part of Asia, which is where this is not common at all. Like I mentioned, minorities are actually falling alarmingly in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
And it's a testimony to our laws. It's a testimony to how truly secular and plural and liberal India's, social fabric is. So I have no doubt at all. But so in many ways, I was not surprised by the findings of the report. I'm guessing most people who watch demographic data will not be surprised. It might be a surprise to Western researchers, scholars, media personnel, governments, who, for reasons I think it's coming from either ignorance or whatever the intentions be.
Yeah.
But now here we have something objective to sort of challenge those fake narratives.
Professor Shabika Ravi, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking my questions. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Shiv. Take care.
Sam Pitroda had to resign from the position of chairman of the Indian Overseas Congress, but a day after Pitroda's racist statement on Indian skin color and ethnicity, well, the Congress clearly isn't done yet with these stereotypes being dropped. Now, Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary, the Congress's leader in the Lok Sabha, has scored another self-goal for the grand old party. Believe it or not. Take a look.
हमारे देश में प्रोटो ऑस्ट्रेलियन है, निग्रेटा है, मंगोलोइड क्लास है तो है.
It's the season of self-goals for the Congress this election. Congress leader Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary played down the controversy and backed Pitroda.
हमारे देश में प्रोटो ऑस्ट्रेलियन है, निग्रेटा है, मंगोलोइड क्लास है तो है. हमारा देश की क्या है? ये डेमोग्राफी जो है हमारे देश की जो टोपोग्राफी, ये रीजन जो है, ये रीजनल फीचर भी अलग-अलग होते हैं. ये तो होते हैं रीजनल फीचर अलग-अलग.
The BJP has slammed Adhir, calling him a serial offender.
And this was not the first mistake of this gentleman. Did he not take a shot at the Honorable Rashtrapati ji, the President of India, by calling her Rashtrapatni? This is the same person. He is doing it again.
Adhir's remarks come hours after Rahul Gandhi's advisor Sam Pitroda's comment dividing India based on their skin color. Prime Minister Narendra Modi breathed fire over the Congress Neta's statement.
शहजादे के फिलोसोफर ने इतनी बड़ी गाली दी है जिसने में गुस्सा भर दिया है. संविधान सर पे लेकर के नाचने वाले लोग चमड़ी के रंग के आधार पर मेरे देशवासियों का अपमान कर रहे हैं.
The backlash forced Pitroda to step down as the chief of the Indian Overseas Congress. Will the Congress take now action against Adhir, who backed Pitroda? Bureau Report, India Today.
And some news just coming in from the battlefield of Telangana, which goes to the polls in just a few days from now in the fourth phase. Pavan Kalyan's nephew, superstar actor Allu Arjun, has backed power star, his uncle Pavan Kalyan. Allu Arjun just tweeted, "My heartfelt wishes to Pavan Kalyan on your election journey. I've always been immensely proud," says Allu Arjun, "of the path you've chosen, dedicating your life to service. As a family member, my love and support will always be with you. My best wishes for achieving all that you aspire for," says Allu Arjun to his uncle, power star Pavan Kalyan. And Pavan Kalyan spoke to India Today's Akshita Nandagopal just a couple of days ago over a viral video of Pavan Kalyan touching Prime Minister Narendra Modi's feet at a public event. Take a look.
The Prime Minister is here. There's going to be a road show with you, with Mr. Naidu, everyone coming together. There was a video that went viral of you, sir, just a few days ago, where you were touching the Prime Minister's feet and he immediately stopped you. It's gone viral because he's immediately like, no, don't touch my feet. But do you look up to the Prime Minister in that sense as someone who's your guru of sorts?
Yeah, for me, he's like a guru and brother rolled into one.
An elder brother?
An elder brother. And I have extreme respect for him, so you have to understand my connection, my relationship with him much before he became a PM. And I really, because I feel country needs very gutsy leaders. So when Mumbai attacks happened, we were thinking 72 hours. We were in the state of we are in a state of fear. The entire nation is gripped with fear. I was thinking, how come if there is a leader, a charismatic leader, who would come out and open, would empower people and say something, how that would be. So for the thought process, always, that thought used to match up with the Modi, always, though he was a chief minister of Gujarat. So when he finally was thinking about, when there, his name started coming out, so by then I launched my party, so I went and, it's purely out of my respect and liking towards him. The moment I touch his feet, it is a very true feeling. It's not something, it comes from the bottom of my heart.
A day after over 100 Air India Express crew reported sick in a coordinated mass bunking exercise to protest certain things happening in the company, leaving passengers in the lurch and flight after flight after flight being cancelled, completely disrupting hundreds of passengers' travel plans. The airline has taken a big step today by sacking several protesting crew members, calling their sick leave a premeditated, coordinated move. Air India Express has issued termination letters to at least 30 crew members who reported sick together. Here's a report. A chain reaction of turmoil and turbulence. Roughly 175 flights operated by the Tata Group's budget airline, Air India Express, have been grounded in the last 2 days. All this following mass sick leave taken by 100 cabin crew members on Tuesday night.
Well, at the Delhi's Terminal 3 airport, at the display number, all I see, one flight which was Air India Express 8:20, which was to be departure, until 10:20. Flight nearly being reported for 2 hours. The flight is delayed. Rest all several domestic flights that I've seen Air India since morning have been on time, have either taken off, or the check-in is in process, or a few, the gates even close. Now, gradually, because these are the unscheduled flights, all of a sudden, you go to the boarding counter, you take your boarding passes, and then suddenly you realize the crew members, which were supposed to be as per the rosters to ensure services in the flight, have not joined the duty. And then that leads to the cancellation of the flight. And that's how the unscheduled flight literally causes inconvenience. And that's how the situation here at Delhi's Terminal 3 airport.
On Thursday alone, a staggering 85 flights were cancelled. Air India Express runs more than 360 flights daily.
पूना की फ्लाइट से दिल्ली आए और दिल्ली टू हमारा श्रीनगर फ्लाइट था। दिल्ली में लैंड होने के बाद हमको पता चला कि श्रीनगर का फ्लाइट कैंसिल हो गया, लेकिन क्यों कैंसिल हो गया, किस लिए, क्या वजह थी, ये बताया नहीं। जब हम एयर एक्सप्रेस के इंक्वायरी काउंटर मतलब उनके ऑफिस में आए तो उधर का स्टाफ कोई ठीक तरह से जवाब नहीं दे रहा था। रात का स्टाफ सुबह चेंज हो गया, सुबह का अभी दोपहर का चेंज हो गया, लेकिन उनका आंसर यही है कि हम काम कर रहे हैं, आपको आधे घंटे बाद बताएंगे, 1 घंटे बाद बताएंगे।
घटिया टाइप बोलते हैं ना, उस टाइप ट्रीटमेंट हुई है एयर इंडिया से। कोई हमको ये नहीं मिला, खाने पीने का नहीं मिला, सही जवाब नहीं मिला, लोगों ने बहुत झगड़े किए, बहुत मारा पीटी भी हुई रात को वहाँ।
प्लेन लेट के कारण एयर इंडिया वाले बोल रहे हैं एयर एक्सप्रेस में जाओ, एयर एक्सप्रेस वाले बोल रहे हैं एयर इंडिया में जाओ। कोई संतोषजनक हमको जवाब नहीं दे रहे हैं, कुछ ठीक से नहीं बता रहे हैं, हमको दोनों तरफ घुमा रहे हैं खाली।
With a workforce of over 2,000 cabin crew members, the airline serves 31 domestic and 14 international destinations and boasts a fleet of over 70 aircraft. According to airline sources, Air India Express has sent termination letters to 30 crew members who called in sick, accusing them of premeditated absence without a valid reason, and warning others to return to work promptly or face similar termination. A meeting has been called in Delhi by a regional labour commissioner, summoning both the airline management and protesting employees in an effort to resolve the ongoing airline crisis. Air India was acquired by the Tatas in 2022 and is in the process of merging with Vistara, while Air India Express is merging with AirAsia India. Bureau Report, India Today. You saw a series of cancellations hit Vistara, and now you're seeing a series of cancellations hit Air India Express, both airlines owned by the Tata Group. But very quickly, want to tell our viewers, many of you will be passengers, these are the things to keep in mind. What should Air India Express passengers do? This is a popular airline, remember, which is a large fleet of 70 aircraft. Please always check your flight status before heading to the airport. That might sound obvious, but how many of us actually check the status before going to the airport? Please do that. Can you reschedule your flight? Air India Express is offering free rescheduling at this time. Will you get a refund? If it's delayed by 3 hours, you are eligible to get a refund from Air India Express. What if you have to travel urgently? Forget about it. It's not predictable with Air India Express. Book a ticket with other airlines if rescheduling on Air India Express itself is not possible. I want to bring Pallavi Saha in. Pallavi, you broke the story of not just the turbulence, but also the terminations of, many of the crew members who've gone on this kind of mass sick leave. The first question I want to ask is what's going on? Why this mass sick leave? Is this over pay structures? Are these merger blues emerging once again? How are they being resolved? And why is it taken on such a big, big form?
Well, it has in fact started with the merger, which was given a clearance in October 2022 as far as Air Asia being merged into Air India Express is concerned, and the entity being called AIX Connect. Since then, of course, there have been issues where Air India Express employees feel that they're being replaced in some sense by Air Asia employees, that Air Asia seems to have a bigger say and their staff seem to have a bigger say in how things should pan out in terms of remuneration, in terms of allowances, DA, allowances, etc. They're talking about nepotism as well, that there are qualified staff within the airline, but others from outside are being brought in as well. They're talking about unfair dismissals and terminations as well. Some even talking about some amount of racial discrimination, saying because most of Air India Express had staff which was based out of Kochi. They were flying to the Gulf, they were flying to Southeast Asia, so they had dark-skinned staff. Some of them have even claimed that, when the merged entity came up, some of them were told that their skin color wasn't, something that would be approved of as far as the merged entity and serving the merged entity was concerned, serving guests on that entity was concerned. So various such issues. But right now, as we speak, Shiv, there is a meeting which is taking place in Dwarka here in Delhi. It started at 2 p.m. today. Right. The airline's Chief Human Resources Officer, Anjali Chatterjee, is in that meeting. Some of the protesting crew members are there. Also, the union which represents them, which is a part of the Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh, is also present over there. The Chief Labour Commissioner is trying to broker peace because he's got clear instructions from both the Aviation Ministry and the Labour Ministry that this crisis needs to be resolved today itself. But the crew has dug its heels in, saying, we are over 200 of us. If you want to just send out termination orders, fair enough, go ahead, sack all of us. Otherwise, we come back to the table when you withdraw those termination notices and we will resume duty. All of us will resume duty and we can take forward conversation which has been stuck concerning remuneration, terminations, nepotism, whistleblower policy, etc.
It's interesting because, the teething troubles were always to be expected once the acquisition of Air India happened, a couple of years ago, Pallavi. This also seems to suggest that there is, a kind of jarring collision between a private sector, corporate way of doing things and the old Sarkari, government-owned airline way of doing things. And I think that also has something to do with the manner in which things are actually playing out. But my next question would be, how is Air India Express planning to tide this over? We are still in that post-COVID phase where civil aviation is kind of finding its feet, trying to get back into the air in a big way, as it were. How does Air India Express, tide over this crisis? Because each day will again bring mounting losses if they're not operating their fleet to full capacity.
Absolutely. When you go ahead and you have to, as per the DGCA norms, give full refunds to all passengers when you're cancelling flights or you're dealing them by over 3 hours, clearly that's heavy on your pockets on a daily basis. Yesterday they cancelled over 90 flights. Today they've cancelled 85 flights and they're running on a curtailed schedule at the moment. So clearly it's impacting them. Okay. Of course, they took a tough stance yesterday when they decided to call some of these employees saying, you've got some time, rethink your decision, or we're sending across a termination notice, which they
Right.
did to at least 30 employees. But what has happened is now the Chief Labour Commissioner has come into the picture. These employees have dug their heels in. So it seems like Air India Express will have to bend a little in order to, of course, bring back operations to full scale.
Polami, thanks very much for that. Bad time for passengers, certainly a bad time for the airline. Hopefully, it will be resolved very soon. Polami and her team will keep you posted on that. It's a wrap on this segment of 5 Live.